Welcome to the Tell You Later Show, conveniently located at the intersection of historical and hysterical.
Sincere thanks to all those who support us on Patreon. See the full list at the end of the show. And there's always room for more.
We haven't got a title song for this show, so we're singing this thing instead.
Okay.
It's really just a substitute. Nonetheless, the melody may stay in your head.
Oh, I hope so.
'Cause it's a tune.
It's a tune.
You'll love to croon.
You'll love to croon.
But there's one thing you should know. We have to confess we do not possess a title song for this show.
Ain't it peculiar?
Believe it or not, we haven't got a title song for this show.
Oops.
Hi, it's me, Barbie, and you're with my BFF, Katie. I hope you're having fun. You guys are so cool. Bye-bye.
This is your first assignment. What would you have them do?
We might have them, but probably at first, read some scripts that are in process, listen to some of our recent episodes, come to many of our meetings, just to see what's going on in the team.
Is it 8 hours a day when you're an intern?
Yeah, it's a full, generally, depending on their schedule. They could have something else going on, but for the most part, yeah, they're entirely there to do an internship, so it's just like a job. You work 8 in the morning till 5 in the afternoon.
Are they like gophers where you say, go get us copy or go make copies of this? Or
They can be. That's not the primary purpose of it.
Do you have them write scripts?
Several of our internships, including me, but several of our interns have written scripts for the show. It's hard to start from zero and get an Odyssey script written in 2 to 3 months, especially for our interns who have never written an Odyssey script before. So that's a major challenge to get to that point. But if they want to work on a script, then yeah, we would have them work on a script. But it might be something more like writing some promos or spots for Adventures in Odyssey.
Okay, so here I am. I'm Katie. I'm an intern. I come in and you say, oh, okay, Katie, so we're going to show you, you can listen to this production meeting. You can hear how we get our ideas. When you go to your writing, because I know the writers do like a retreat or so they go away.
We do like about once a year. We do a writers meeting, week-long strategy session.
So that probably wouldn't happen with an intern.
I think it has, but it's not necessarily part of it. Usually not.
Okay, so they learn how to what?
They would learn, it's not so much learning how to do something as seeing how we do things.
Oh, so they're more like flies on the wall?
They are that, but they're also anything that I would assign them to do, and it's been a little while since I've had an intern, but anything I would assign them to do is something that is actual work, something that we are actually creating. So I don't have our interns doing busy work that doesn't go anywhere.
Okay, so for a real thing you assigned an intern to do?
An Adventures in Odyssey podcast script. So the script for the podcast, or coming up with a list of questions that we're going to ask our interviewee, or coming up with titles for an Adventures in Odyssey album. Now, we of course would still have final say on what the title is, but none of us are necessarily title experts, so it's always great to have a list.
So that's pretty creative. They get to do some creative things.
Another thing would be some of our Odyssey video podcasts, which are higher production, all of our podcasts, I hope, are creative, but there's more story usually in our video podcasts. And so many of our interns, including somebody who I believe has worked on your show, Josiah, he worked on several video podcasts for Odyssey.
Wow, so just shout out to Josiah Crandall, who has done all the animation for our songs, our title song, and if you go on the YouTube playlist, we have one section of just the songs that Will and I did some songs, and Will Ryan, and Josiah offered to animate them. I didn't realize that he was an intern.
So we had him first.
I didn't know that, which is really funny. So he kind of does work, but the couple things he did, he just sort of volunteered. Our whole theme song, one day I just heard from him and he said, I just put this together and thought maybe you would like it, and we went nuts. We thought it was fantastic. But before that, see, I didn't even know he was an intern. He asked me if I would play Dungeons and Dragons with his Dungeons and Dragons group online, and I guess they're all part of podcasts, these people who play Dungeons and Dragons, and he knew that I was Sheila's voice in Dungeons and Dragons.
The cartoon. Yes.
Oh, you've got your new Tell You Later tote bag.
Cute? I love it.
Did you get that at Merchulator?
I sure did. It's so
Merchulator.com.
cute. Look,
Super cute.
Tell Ya Later bag, and it's got everything in it.
Do they have hats? That's where I thought he came from. I didn't realize, and then when I joined their little podcast, and I'd never played Dungeons and Dragons, it turned out they were all like Christians who had various Christian podcasts, and they were playing Dungeons and Dragons.
I have never played Dungeons and Dragons.
No, I didn't, and I can't
so
say
I don't know
I actually
how it works.
even played because I didn't do very well. They were very kind to me, but they wanted me on the show. So that's how I met Josiah, and then I found out he had been an intern, which is crazy. Yeah.
That's an appropriate time to play the bell?
I think so. Yeah, whenever there's a lull. Just go ahead and hit it. So, okay, so if anybody wanted to apply to an internship, how would they do it? How do we find anything these days? We Google our way there. So Google your way there.
Focus on the Family Internships. There's a website for it, and there's a whole department that sets up the internships.
So do you always have an intern, or just sometimes?
No, in fact, in recent years, we've actually switched our approach a little bit, and now we have apprenticeships.
Slaves. No.
Yes. We've gone back to the old standby. No, we have apprenticeships now, because with the internships, present company excluded, usually the internships didn't lead to long-term positions with focus on the family. It was more a benefit
like
to...
a field trip.
Well,
a 3-month field
trip. A
trip.
longer field trip, yeah. But it was very much a benefit to the college students who came for the internships, and that was great. But it wasn't necessarily as much a way to find long-term talent for Odyssey.
It wasn't benefiting you.
It was benefiting us, but not benefiting us in terms of getting new people for Odyssey, and we needed some new people for Odyssey. And so we started, I believe this was Dave Arnold's brainchild, started some apprenticeships, which is kind of a more old-fashioned idea of finding young people who are interested in learning a trade, and them learning the trade from people who have already been doing it.
That's really good.
Yeah.
That's really good. I'm gonna just give a bunch of dings for that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So good
that's
idea,
great.
Dave.
Yeah, so they can apply for maybe be an apprentice. Like we have a writer on the show right now, Jesse, who's an apprentice.
He is an apprentice, and he is out here at his first session.
Yeah.
2 of his shows are being recorded this week. And one of them, tomorrow morning, that you'll be a part of, is the second show that he is co-directing.
Wow.
So he wrote the episode, and he is co-directing the
So he really
show with
is
Marshall
learning by doing, which, by the way, is my motto.
Learn by doing?
Learn by doing, yeah. When I coach voiceover.
Kinesthetic, is that what that's called?
I guess, maybe. I just feel like, you do it and you get feedback, and that's how you learn. You could, talk your brains out, but that's not the same as actually trying to do it, right? And Jesse had some interesting we did go to dinner before we set up here in this fabulous palace that we're in, and yes, it was so nice of them, to leave the elephants outside, because we'd said that it would be a little bit noisy, so please keep the elephants out. A little bit crowded. But he was saying how different it is when you write a script and then hear it. You were were you sitting by us? No,
I
you
don't
weren't
think I
part
heard
of
the
that
conversation.
conversation.
I think I was talking to
We had like
Townsend.
a big long table.
Yeah. The long table, it's hard because if you have more than 6-ish people, you have to pick your conversation.
Right,
and so I was not purposefully ignoring you guys
No,
or
but you
anything.
couldn't hear.
But I was
he
mostly
was
talking
saying,
to Townsend.
so when you started on this, so first you were kind of like, you wrote a script as an intern, right? Mm-hmm. And
started. It didn't finish when I was an intern.
Then you went back to college. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to come back to my thought, which my thought is about you as a writer.
Okay.
Because what did you study in college?
I started as a journalism major.
Okay.
I was thinking when I went to college, because I didn't even really think of Odyssey as something you could do for a career. I loved Odyssey, but I wasn't thinking that would be my job, my life. And so I started as a journalism major, thinking I'd do some sort of like travel writing, like National Geographic kind of thing. And then I switched to media communication, which is much more in line with what Adventures in Odyssey is and the kind of things I needed to learn for working for Adventures in Odyssey.
So you went back, you did your internship, you went back to college, you graduated, and then they hired you, right?
And
as a writer?
Yes. Yeah, as I was finishing college, I was also working for consulting with Odyssey and writing for Odyssey. I was a
Because they
temp
still
employee at
had
the
to
time.
call Nathan to say, Nathan, did we ever do this on a show before? I mean, that's what you're like.
Sometimes they'd ask questions like that, but often it was...
You knew the history. Oh, this already happened, or go to episode number whatever. Like, you knew all the
This was
shows by...
pre-AIO Wiki, so
You
yes.
knew all the episodes by number, right?
Many of I think that's something that's been exaggerated a little bit, but yeah, I knew many of the numbers, yes.
Which is crazy. Not to say that you're crazy.
I'm crazy.
But, I mean, you really knew the show inside and out. Yeah, and that's amazing. That's...
Do you have one of these yet? It's at katieleigh.com.
That's... I don't know. I'm sure there's some people out there who say, I could give Nathan a run for his money.
I'm sure they could.
So, but anyway, so then you started writing more scripts,
Yes.
and then you were directing. So
Yes.
how many positions have you held?
Oh boy.
Give me the titles.
I
Now.
think I was hired as I think it was just Adventures in Odyssey writer was my first title. And then I think I became a senior writer. And then I became a producer, and now I'm a line producer.
Wow. Okay.
And nobody outside of probably some fellow line producers knows what a line producer is.
So what is it? You draw lines?
Yes. All the lines on the show come from me. No. Line producer, well, if you watch a movie, we're not a movie, but if you watch a movie and you watch the credits of the movie, then there's a unit production manager.
Okay.
And that is the same as a line producer. A line producer is more of a TV show term, but it's basically the air traffic control, or the person who
So do you have to wear headphones and a microphone?
I do sometimes, but no, not generally, unless I'm.
What are you actually navigating?
Well, it's producer's kind of a term that means whatever needs to be done. You're helping to produce the show, and so whether that be scheduling or casting or solving problems, a lot of times. I mean, that's a big part of it. Is
So
there's
did
something that's not
auditions
working?
go through you?
They do. I'm not the deciding factor in those, but I'm part of the process on auditions. There are a number of people who are part of the process on auditions. In particular, the people who are writing or are going to direct the episode are involved in those, and then our showrunner Marshall Younger and our executive producer Dave Arnold are involved in those, and then our coordinator Megan is involved in those as well.
Okay, so line producer takes care of problems.
That's a big part of it, yes.
What does showrunner do?
Showrunner is the overall direction of the show, and in particular, working with all the writers. So
You might
planning
hear
out
people
the whole.
passing by. I don't know if the microphone's picking up, but
It's very much the ambiance of this area.
palace.
Yes, so
Yes.
it makes it unique.
Yes.
But no, the showrunner, Marshall, his job would be working with all the writers, determining the direction of the show, planning out the next year of shows, and getting those shows written and recorded would be his primarily responsibility.
Are you still writing?
Yes, but most of what my job is now is working with the writers, working with the sound designers, working with the other producers on the show, and getting the show keeping things moving, so getting things across the finish line. So with a recording
Marshall
session,
thinks it up and hands it over to you?
well, in sort of, in some senses,
Trying
like
to track with you here,
well, for this
Nathan.
session, you had mentioned earlier that this is the first session where we had people in the room at the same time, where we had more than one actor
Right.
in the room at the same time. That's the first time since COVID started that we've been able to do that. And that was born kind of out of necessity because Marshall had written 2 scripts that had several big scenes in them that had more people in those scenes than we had slots in the studio.
And they're very funny, by the way.
They are very
I hope
funny.
you listen to them. Very funny.
And I'm sure, as you've talked about on here, the way we record Odyssey is everybody's together. They're not necessarily in the same room during COVID, but they're all recording, acting at the same time. We don't record one person's lines and then the next person's and the next person's. We get everybody together. So because we didn't have enough slots in the studio, we said, well, how are we going to do this? Well, one way we can do that now, with the regulations being what they are, is that a few of the actors can get COVID tests. If they test negative, then they can be in the room at the same time. And so that was a project that I had to figure out because we had these shows. And
That was kind of a headache, wasn't it?
Well, not necessarily a headache. This is one of the things that if anyone else out there wants to be a line producer, I think you have to have this kind of perverse personality, perverse quirk, where when something goes wrong, you actually kind of like it.
Because it's a challenge.
It gives you a problem to solve.
You
Yes.
like to solve
So
problems.
I kind of like when things go wrong because it's something we can fix.
I think I would be a good line producer. I'm just saying.
you might be.
I think I would be.
You have to solve a lot of problems.
Let
and
me.
you
Can
solve
I
problems.
just change the subject a little
Of
bit?
course.
Because some people out there may be tired of this topic. So I'm going to ask you.
I've gotten boring, she's saying.
No. But you climb things.
Yes.
You-
Mountains, rocks, ice,
What's
snow.
with the climbing?
What's with it?
Yeah, I mean, how did that start, and what's that all about?
Well, boy, I don't even know exactly how it
Did your
started.
did you come from a family
No.
of climbers?
Not climbers, but my dad in particular was very outdoorsy. And so
Okay.
he probably was the one who instilled in me a love of being outside and love of
Are
the
there
outdoors.
mountains in Pennsylvania?
They call them mountains in Pennsylvania, and there are a lot of hills, but my house in Colorado Springs is twice as high in elevation as the highest mountain in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, so how did you start climbing in Pennsylvania? Just a lot of ladders?
Well, no, didn't do a lot of climbing in Pennsylvania. I'm sure there
Hiking?
is, but I did a lot of hiking. We grew up out in the country. Our nearest neighbor was probably more than a mile away, and so we
How
were
far
very
was your
much-
public school?
About 15 minutes from our house.
Wow, okay.
But definitely spend a lot of time out in the woods because didn't have a lot of neighbors to hang out with. But
So you had a lot of friends that were sticks? Thank you so much to all you patrons who help us out there. We really appreciate your support. Thank you everybody who's buying merch on Merchulator. Go to my website, katieleigh.com, and see there's all kinds of cool stuff. And you can see it there or on Merchulator.com. And also those who listen on Anchor, I want to shout out to you guys because I know there's a bazillion of you out there who listen and really appreciate you too.
sticks that I
No, you
talk
come
to.
from a big family, don't you?
I did have a big family, and we spend a lot of time outside, my brothers and I.
How many brothers and sisters?
I have 4 younger brothers and 1 younger sister. I'm the oldest. And so, yeah,
That
we spent a lot
makes
of time
6.
playing in the woods. Yes, we had 6 kids in our family.
So you're an outdoorsy family.
And then as far as where the climbing came from, it was something that I was interested in. I'm not sure why exactly, but it was something I was interested in from a pretty young age. And I remember specifically a trip when I was 16 to Yosemite.
Oh.
And my dad, Yosemite is a place that a lot of rock climbers go. And my dad looked up and was looking at the rock climbers and saying, why in the world would anyone want to do that?
Yeah, because in Yosemite, I mean, it's sheer.
There are enormous cliffs.
Right? They go up El Capitan,
Yes.
right? You go to the valley and you see people. It's not even a slant. They're just somehow climbing up this
on this
rock
side of the
wall.
rock, which is what climbers love, is those sheer rock walls. And my dad said, why in the world would anyone want to do that? And I, in the back of my mind, was saying, well, I'd kind of want to do that. That looks really interesting to me.
Did anybody think that you were the adventurous type when you were 16? Did they say, well, I wouldn't put it past Nathan to climb a rock wall?
You'd probably have to ask someone who knew me when I was 16. I don't know what they would have said.
So you thought that was cool. So when did you first start climbing? And
when I went to college, there were rocks to climb in Kentucky. There's an area there called the Red River Gorge that has a lot of great rock climbing, and that's where I learned to rock climb from people who knew what they were doing and could
so
keep
they
me
had
safe.
rock climbing classes or just rock climbing clubs?
Well, there was an outdoor club, and I joined the outdoor club, and then the next year became the president of the outdoor club.
Of course.
And we planned some rock climbing trips, some camping trips, some canoeing
is this the
trips.
kind of thing where you nail things into the rocks and then tie yourself and sleep off the side of a mountain?
I have never done that. I haven't stayed overnight on what's called a portaledge, when you build a ledge to sleep on. I haven't done that.
Is that something you want to do?
I'd do it someday if given the opportunity.
Okay, so that's called rock climbing.
Yes.
And then there's some, do you do that rappelling?
A lot of times you'll get to the top of somewhere and you'll need to get back down.
Oh.
And so the way that you get down is you rappel. Or there might be a route where, it might, I don't know if you can see me on the camera, but it might go like this and then down and then up and then down. And so to continue along the route, then yes, you have to rappel down.
So, and you learned how to do all that?
Learned how, you were saying learn by doing, kinesthetic learning, and so that's how I learned to rock climb, was from people who knew what they were
Wow.
doing. Learned how to rock climb and rappel, and then just in Colorado, there's a pretty big community of climbers because there are a lot of things to climb in Colorado. There are a lot of mountains, a lot of rocks, a lot of snow, a lot of ice, and so there are other people who can teach you these skills that you don't know yet.
So when you go, do you go in groups or you don't go by yourself?
No, I don't go by myself.
And you go in ice too? You climb ice?
Yes.
Tell us about the most exciting climb.
Most exciting climb, boy. Well, the longest climb, I don't know if it was the most exciting climb, but the longest climb so far was 22 hours.
You climbed for 22 hours.
Yeah, we left at 3:30 in the morning, hiking away from the trailhead, and we arrived back at the car at 1:30 the next morning. We didn't intend to be out that long, but it just took that long to do the route that we were doing.
What happened? I mean, you seem like a planner to me. I think you would have had an idea of how long did you think it was going to be?
I don't know if we knew exactly, but it just, when you're doing a climb that involves rock climbing and ropes and rope systems, it just takes a while because you want to be safe and you want to be careful.
How high did you go?
Well, that was Long's Peak. It was called, and we're getting really into the weeds now, but it was a route called Keener's Route on Long's Peak, and we did it in winter, so it involved snow climbing, ice climbing, and roped rock climbing. And so all of those together, you have to take quite a bit of gear, and it takes some time to transition from one thing to another.
So you have to carry all that gear.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not just climbing yourself. You've also got junk on you.
Gear
and food.
usually in your backpack.
And
yeah, well, some granola bars and stuff just to get you through the day, because you're not cooking, because you don't have time for that.
yeah, but wow, you must like lose weight when you climb.
Probably, but then, you, after that day, after a 22-hour day, then the next morning at breakfast, then you make up for it.
I guess so. Wow. So what's your goal? Like, what's like a dream climb you want to do in the future?
Boy. Probably something
Do you have to have special shoes with spikes?
Not necessarily. Well, for ice and snow, then yes, you have crampons, which are spikes that you put on the bottom of your boots. For rock climbing, years ago, they would use spikes on their shoes. Now you want just a lot of sticky rubber on the bottom of your shoe, so you can stick to the rock.
Okay.
Or stick better than you could with regular shoes.
Like frog feet.
Sort of, yes. Especially for anything that's a little less than vertical. If it's just a little bit less than vertical, then if you have a lot of rubber
Do you
on your
really
shoe.
go vertical?
Oh, sure. Yeah, some of the time.
Oh my goodness. I just can't even. I just can't even. I can't even. I think about you hanging off the side of a wall, a cliff.
Well, in terms of I don't know if you asked this specifically, but in terms of the why, like how I got into it and why people do it, because that was the question that my dad was asking when looking up at those rock climbers
like,
on the walls in
what the heck's the matter with those people?
Why would you want to do that? And it's a hard thing to explain, but the closest thing that I can give as a reason for it is that when you're rock climbing, especially if you're doing something difficult, and I'm kind of taking this explanation from a person who's written about rock climbing, so this was not my original thought, but when you're rock climbing and you're doing something difficult, and especially when you're...
What's the fangirl up to this week? To find out, stay tuned till after the credits.
You're doing something that you start to feel the danger, and you start to feel the exposure to the heights, then there's a mindset that you get into that you can't get anywhere else, because it's such a intense focus on what you're doing. And so you start to forget everything else.
Yeah, because you could die.
Well, you're not thinking about all the other things that are pressing on you in your day-to-day life.
I guess that's a good way to let go of all those other thoughts.
Yes, and there's a freedom to that, of being able to just focus on this one thing, and you're not thinking about the unpaid bills and all the things you have to do and all the things that you're missing out on.
Right?
You're just focusing on this one thing, and there's something very, well, I've already said it, but there's something very freeing and exciting about getting into that headspace.
Wow. Well,
we veered from Adventures in Odyssey, haven't we?
We did, but I don't know too many rock climbers. Actually, you're the only one.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I'm
as
sure
far
there are
as
others
I
in
know.
California. California
well,
has
I know
lots of
my
climbers.
son likes to do stuff. I don't know if he's done that yet, but he usually doesn't tell me things that will worry me.
Well, if he comes to Colorado, then we should meet up.
Did your parents kind of freak out when you started doing that?
I don't think so. I think they've mostly been very supportive of it.
They're
I'm
like,
sure
Nathan who?
No, they certainly didn't do that. I'm sure there have been pictures they've seen posted on Facebook that they thought, oh boy, I'm a little worried about this.
Yeah,
But
because
they've
you're
been,
a dad.
Mm-hmm.
You got people to take care of.
Well, and that is something that, we're talking a lot about climbing here, but that is something that and a few other things that happened in my life changed my perspective a little bit on rock climbing, because my thought when for the first probably, I'm trying to track through it, maybe 12, 13, 14 years of climbing, was that I always wanted to be trying something more difficult and pushing
the envelope.
Not necessarily push the envelope, but I always wanted to be getting better, and always wanted to be trying harder things. Whereas now, and it took me a while to get to this, it seems small, but for me it took me several years to change my perspective on it, to be that if right now I'm at this level. I don't ever have to go any higher. I'm very happy at this level, and if over the years the level goes down, that's fine with me, as long as I'm still out there doing some
Enjoying
things
what you're
outdoorsy and appreciating the creation that God has given us, because so often we're surrounded by civilization and the things that man has created, whereas when you're out in the mountains, you just get to be so much more in the world that God has created for us.
Grounded, literally.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you've reached that contentment that St. Paul talked about, of being content.
I wish that I had reached that level of contentment.
Well, at least you're content with your rock climbing, right?
I'd say that's fair.
Yeah.
Sure.
Wow. I think that's very exciting and unnerving at the same time, and I admire you for doing that. I'm sure that takes a lot of planning, a lot of, and that's creating space. What's cool is you're making time outside of work. We were started talking about work because Odyssey is your work now. First it was your hobby, and then your career. But you take time to do other things, and that's really important because I think that gives you balance, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think that it gives you something, if you're a writer, it gives you something to write about. Because if you are focused only on your writing, you're probably going to start writing stories about writing, because that's your only life experience. But if you have other hobbies and other interests, then it gives you something to tell stories about.
Have we ever done an Odyssey show about climbing? Or outdoors?
We've certainly done things about the outdoors.
Did
camping,
you write them?
Hiking. I don't think I've done an episode
So
about
I'm trying
rock
to see
climbing.
how this... Yeah, so don't you think it's about time?
Possibly. We could do a story about rock climbing.
Or
It is
something.
kind of visual.
Well, if you're saying that, this experience translates into your writing, and yet we haven't seen it...
Well, there is an episode coming up, probably coming up. I'm not sure when this Tell You Later episode comes out. This isn't an episode that I wrote, but there is an episode coming up on the club next spring, I think, that's going to have some rock climbing...
Spring 2023.
Yes, spring 2023. We'll have some rock climbing information in it. It'll be part of the plot. Some of the rope
And did you
systems
write
and
it?
climbing. I didn't, but
But you were consulted.
I'd say I was a rock climbing consultant on the episode. Yes.
Oh, okay. All right.
And
okay.
your listeners, if they listen to that episode, they'll probably know it when they hear it.
And they'll say, I bet Nathan consulted on this. I bet this Nathan Hoobler consulted on this.
One of the fun things about that was that after the episode was written and recorded, then it came time to do the sound effects. And the gentleman who was working on the show, Luke Gano, contacted me and said, hey, there's all this rock climbing stuff in here. Could you bring your gear into the Foley room and we can do some of the sound effects? And so the sound effects are created using the actual gear
So
that the
that's
climbers
like
would use.
art imitating life.
Or
life.
Yes. And vice versa as well.
And vice versa. Yes, well, that's very good. See, so you got to combine both of them.
Yes, got to combine those two things.
So you have a very and you have to be balanced to be a rock climber anyway, probably. I'm sure balance has something. Do you want to know what I do for balance
What
in
do you
my
do?
life? I'll tell you later.
Tell you later.
Tell You Later is a Patreon-driven entertainment show. So what are you waiting for? Come on over. Join us at patreon.com/Tell You Later.
I didn't wink on none or nudge too slightly, I guess. But still somehow you up and guess my inclination, 'cause I never never said yes, I never said no.
Oh my gosh, wait, you're Nathan Hoobler. Oh my gosh, can I draw autograph? Please?
What's your name?
James.
James.
Yes.
Okay, so to James.
Yes, please. And you can sign wherever.
Are you an Adventures in Odyssey fan?
Oh, I'm such an Adventures in Odyssey fan. Beyond that, I love your hat. It has the booth mail and all of that, and it's great. And did you know I'm friends with Katieleigh? I'm like close personal friends.